So Jason, you're gonna open with Joy
Look
Mining.
to the governor.
You look nice.
You know, just thinking, how was the
This
kids'
is
school?
literally the first time I put on anything other than jeans and a t-shirt.
You like me? I've never looked good.
Me either.
No.
I was just
Wait
thinking
a
I want
minute,
to buy a bunch
wait
of
a
suits.
minute, what did you just say?
Yeah,
Why
I know,
would
but you know what?
Why would you say
I've got
that?
suits and I never look
I
good.
don't.
Why would you say that?
I'm a schlub at school, I'm a schlubby kid.
I'm just wrinkly.
I'm a schlubby kid. I can't get my suit.
That's why I was a hippie. That
Wait,
worked.
wait, stop you guys, stop. We're gonna be like 2 minutes. We're gonna be like 2 minutes, thank you.
How many minutes?
2.
Oh, we've got 2 minutes, it's ages.
I'll let
A
you
long time in showbiz.
That's funny. I feel better now that I'm so schlubby.
No, I was just thinking we should reach out to other schlubby people
I'm
because
schlubby.
Have a club.
people think they're the only ones, you know. They go, oh, I'm the only one, everybody looks good,
I'm schlubby.
except for me. But no, we all feel the same way.
Here, sweetheart, this is for you.
You know, Howard Beerwitz fits in there.
I'm starting with Joy Mining, is that right?
We saw him
Let's
once.
make sure the arc is, Sammy, you're gonna be the arc opener. Is the arc open?
Check this thing out. This is the greatest thing ever. It's not even, I mean,
Is there like a little PA on it?
it's basically boom boom ba boom ba boom ba boom ba boom boom. That sounds great. I love this thing.
He sounds beautiful.
Da.
That could make me sound good.
For Psalm 30, I'm gonna read it, and then we'll go,
Oh yeah, wait.
But
Which is that?
you'll start playing, that's the second thing that you're doing, I think.
Oh,
Or the third thing that you're doing.
wait, I need to get the list. Because it's not very printed it nice and big.
So this one, you'll give me a chord, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna read it in English, and then I'm gonna do Elecha, and you'll sing with me and stuff.
Is that, how's that?
No, that's not how I would do it, I would go. If you stop playing, I can't hear it when you do that, so. So don't play it, just sing with me. Let's not play it, that's all I wanted, that'd be great.
All right.
Okay, so I just wanna make sure we're good on that.
We're good.
Okay, and we are live, Shabbat Shalom, everybody, we're gonna start in just a few minutes.
I will need to tell us.
You will need to tell us. I'm Rabbi Marcia, this is Jason.
Morning, Shabbat Shalom. Just running half a minute behind here. Okay.
So then, just so.
I can sing it, no problem.
And you'll start to follow me down. And I'll come in with the verses. Scott reads in English.
That's the, which one is that?
Some is Kohan Shema.
Yeah, got it, yeah. I can start that, it's perfect. It is, it's an organic thing, yes. At least, I was going to say, at least Scott's here, thank goodness.
Yeah, this is our.
It's me.
We're so happy to be here, and Jason and I love to start our services with a song. That's the intention for our service
Darkness covers the land and ocean, and nothing left but dreams and emotion. And there's no hiding from the sirens calling, and the cold sensation that we're always falling, and all there is the music that you made. Even that old song will begin to fade. Oh, we're joy mining. Don't try to fix it, it is not broken. No need to force it, it's already open. Summer is longer than we remember, and love will last us all through September. They do not love that cannot let it show. Oh, they cannot know if they can't say they don't know. Oh, we're joy mining. We're joy mining. 6 in the morning, 8 in the evening. Soon it will be my time for leaving, and I will miss you, the way you're smiling. Keep on smiling, just keep smiling. If there is something I can do to make it easier for you to smile, for smiling's sake. We're joy mining. We're joy mining. We're joy mining.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. I don't know if you heard me because I realized I wasn't in front of the microphone when I was in the center, but Jason and I love to set the intention for our service with an opening song. And I'd love to ask you, Jason, when you wrote Joy Mining, what was there a kernel of something that inspired that melody for you?
Well, yeah, I actually wrote it for the people of the Sawdust Festival in Laguna Beach. And it was toward the end of the show, and everything seemed like, like at the end of a vacation, or, the end of even the school year for some people who like school, that there's that feeling of kind of, to use your word, discombobulation. And I think we're all a bit discombobulated, and our search is for joy. We have the right to pursue happiness, and that's kind of what we're doing, even in the darkest of times, which, right now.
Beautiful, thank you. And actually we're at the end of, we are transitioning back to something else that we once knew, and it is that sort of liminal, unsettling time. And I love the idea that we need to mind the joy of all the great things that happened this past year and where we're going.
And we're at the base of the mountain in the Jewish calendar too, we're at a place of uncertainty. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We begin on page 65 in our Sidurim with the morning blessings. And I invite Scott to rise. He's the congregation this morning. And say Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sech bibina lahavchin ben yom u'ben laila.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzalmo.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani bat chorim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish harumim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesali kol tzorki.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzadei gaver.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigavura.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein liyayef koach.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir sheina me'enai u'tumuna me'afapai v'yiratzon milpanecha. U'tenenu hayom v'chol yom l'cheinu l'chesed l'rachamim beinecha v'einecha ro'enu v'tigmalenu chasadim tovim baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim li'amo Yisrael. You may be seated. We're going to turn ahead to page 72, a psalm for Shabbat. Hayom yom Shabbat Kodesh shebo hayu halivi'im omrim b'veit hamikdash Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat.
Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat.
Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. U'lezamer l'shimcha elyon. Lehagid b'boker chastecha. V'emunacha b'leilot. Alei asor v'alei navel. Alei higayon b'chinor. Sing with us. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat. U'lezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simchtani Adonai b'folecha. V'maseh yadecha aranein. Magaghu ma'asecha Adonai. Me'od amku machshavotecha. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat. U'lezamer l'shimcha elyon. Yishbar lo yedach asil lo yavin et zot b'frach rashim. Oev saviat tzitzuku b'lei aven. Lisham talmadei adviatam arom li'olam Adonai. Ki hine oivecha Adonai, ki hine oivecha yovedu. Yitpardu kol polei aven. V'taram kir eim karni v'loti b'shem and ranan. V'tabeit eni b'shurai. V'kamim alai. Mereim tishmana oznai. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. They shall grow like the cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They will thrive in the courts of our God. Tzaddik Katamar Yifrach.
צדיק קטן מה יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגה. צדיק קטן מה יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגה. שתולים בבית אדוני, עצות אלוהינו יפריחו, עוד יבנון בשיבה. שנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי אשר אדוני, צורי ולא עוולת בו. צדיק קטן מה יפרח, כארז בלבנון ישגה.
We continue on page 81 with Psalm 30. And Scott and I'm going to invite Scott up here. We're going to read it responsively, and then we'll sing a little bit. A Psalm of David, a song for the dedication of the temple.
I extol you, Adonai. You raised me up. You did not permit foes to rejoice over me.
Adonai, I cried out, and you healed me. You saved me from the pit of death.
Sing to Adonai, you faithful. Acclaim God's holiness.
God's anger lasts a moment. Divine love is lifelong. Tears may linger for a night, but joy comes with the dawn.
While at ease, I once thought, nothing can shake my security. Favor me, and I am a mountain of strength. Hide your face, Adonai, and I am terrified.
To you, Adonai, would I call. Before the eternal would I plead.
What profit is there if I am silenced? What benefit if I go to my grave? Will the dust praise you? Will it proclaim your faithfulness?
Hear me, Adonai. Be gracious. Be my help.
You transformed my mourning into dancing, my sackcloth into robes of joy, that I might sing your praise unceasingly, that I might thank you, Adonai, my God, forever.
Hafachta mispedi lemacholi, pitachta saki, vatehazreini simcha, leman yizamercha, chavod velo yidom, Adonai Elohai leolam bodeka, And that was composed by Dale Schatz, one of our favorite other musical partners. I invite anybody who is observing a yard site or in a period of mourning to rise and recite with me Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
V'alma divra chiyotei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach la'alam u'le'almei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran b'yalma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen.
Amen.
I invite those of you not yet standing to rise for Baruch She'amar as Jason leads us and we sing along.
Jason's just realised that he didn't have a kippah on this whole time.
Holy moly.
I know, you couldn't tell because I've got so much hair. But I can't continue in all good faith without putting it on. There we go. All right. Baruch she'amar v'haya olam, Baruch hu Baruch gozer ukayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem tzavon l'eriyav, Baruch chai le'al, v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch podeh u'matzil, Baruch shemo.
Yachid chei haolamim, melech mishubach u'mefardei ad shemo agadol, Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
melech mehulal batishbachot.
Amen.
We turn ahead to page 87. And please join me in Psalm 19. Lamnatseach mizmor leDavid, Hashamayim misaprim kavod el, Umaseh dav magid harakia, Yom liyom yabia omar, V'layla v'layla, Yechaveh dat, Ein omar ve'ein dvarim boli nishma kolam. The sun from its tent in the heavens emerges like a bridegroom from his chamber, exulting like a champion eager to run his course. From the rim of the east it rises to sweep in majesty upward westward, warming all the earth as it passes. The Torah of Adonai is perfect, reviving the spirit. The decrees of Adonai are sure, enlightening the simple. The precepts of Adonai are just, gladdening the heart. The mitzvah of Adonai is clear, opening the eyes. Please join me at the bottom for Yihiyu l'ratzon imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha. Yihiyu l'ratzon imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali, Adonai tzuri v'goali. Sing with me. Yihiyu l'ratzon imrei fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali, Adonai tzuri v'goali. We turn ahead to page 99 for Psalm 148. And this is a beautiful Nava Tehillah melody that Jason and I love to sing.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, Adonai min hashamayim. Hallelujah, b'romim. Hallelujah, kol melachav. Hallelujah, kol tzevav. Hallelujah, shemesh v'yareach. Hallelujah, kol kofei or. Hallelujah, shemei hashamayim. L'hamayim, asher ve'al shamayim. Yehallelu et Shem Adonai, Yehu tzivav v'nivrahu, v'yamidem la'ad le'olam, chok natan v'lo בארץ תנינים וכל תהומות, ישוב ערד, שלג וקיטור, רוח שערה עושה דברו. ההרים וכל גבעות, הצפרי וכל ארזים, החיה וכל בהמה, רמז וציפור כנף, מלכי ארץ וכל לאומים, שרים וכל שופטי הארץ, בחורים וגם בתולים, זקנים עם נערים, יהללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו. הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם קרן לעמו. תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל, המקרבו, הללויה, הללו, הללויה. And we close our singing of Psalms with the last line of Psalm 150 on page 100, Kol HaNeshama Tehallel. And this is a beautiful canon that Jason, Scott, and I will sing together. First, we'll sing together. Kol HaNeshama Tehallel, Hallelujah.
Kol HaNeshama Tehallel.
HaNeshama Tehallel, I invite you to rise as we sing Song of the Sea on page 102. Vayosh Adonai bayom ahu et Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim vayar Yisrael Mitzrayim meit al sfat hayam vayar Yisrael et hayad hagadolah asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim vayeru ha'am et Adonai vayaminu b'Adonai u'b'Moshe avdo Az Yashir Moshe v'nei Yisrael et hashira hazot l'Adonai vayomru le'mor hashir l'Adonai ki gaoga sus v'rocho rama vayam Ozi v'zimrat Ozi Vehu Elohi Avivi Aram Amenhu Adonai Yishmilcham Adonai Shemo Markavot Paro V'chelo Yarabayam Umivchar Shalishavtu B'ubiyam Suftu Omot Yechasiu Yardu V'Psalot Moaben Yamin Chadonai Nadari Bakoach Yamin Chadonai Tirat Zoyev Uberov Gaoncha Taros Kamecha Tishalach Aroncha Yochlemu Kakash Uberuach HaPecha Nirmu Mayim Nitzvu Nikonevnu Armori Micha bocha nedari bakodesh norati lo dose felen. Nevei kodshecha shamu amim yirgazu nechil achaz yoshvei belashed. Namogu kol yoshvei kena antipo alehem emata v'fachad. Ad yavor amcha Adonai ad yavor amzu kanita tiviemo. Mikdash Adonai Konanu Yadecha Adonai Yimloch Leolam Adonai Yimloch Leolam Ba'ed Ki Adonai HaMelucha Moshel Bagoyim Ve'alu Moshim B'Har Tzion Lishpot Harei Sav Ve'aytal Adonai HaMelucha Ve'haya Adonai LaMelech Al Kol Haaretz Bayom Hahu Yeh Adonai Echad U'Shemo Echad. You may be seated. We continue on page 104 with Nishmat Kol Chai.
Nishmat kol chai, tvarech shimcha, Adonai, Adonai, Eloheinu. Nishmat kol chai, tvarech et shimcha, Adonai, Adonai, Eloheinu. Yididai-dai-dai, yididai-dai, yididai-dai-dai-dai, 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 yididai-dai-dai-dai. Nishmat kol chai, tvarech et shimcha, Adonai, Adonai, Eloheinu. Nishmat kol chai, tvarech et shimcha, Adonai, Adonai, Eloheinu.
And we continue with Ilu Finu, and this is, we'll sing this as a canon.
That's right.
Ilu Finu Male Shira, Male Shira, Shira Kayam, Ushonenu Rina Kamon, Hamon Galav.
Ilufinu Male Shira, Male Shira, Shira Kayam,
Male Shira, Shira Kayam, Ushonenu Rina Kamon, Hamon Galav.
Could song fill our mouths as water fills the sea, and could joy flood our tongue like countless waves?
Could our lips utter praise as limitless as the sky, and could our eyes match the splendor of the sun?
Could we soar with arms like an eagle's wings and run with gentle grace as the swiftest deer?
Never could we fully state our gratitude for 1/10,000th of the lasting love that is your precious blessing, dearest God, granted to our ancestors and to us. Mimitzrayim ge'altanu Adonai, Eloheinu umibeit avadim peditanu. From Egypt you redeemed us, from the house of bondage you delivered us. In famine you nourished us, in prosperity you sustained us. You rescued us from the sword, protected us from pestilence, and saved us from severe and lingering disease. To this day, your compassion has sustained us. Your kindness has not forsaken us. Never abandon us, Adonai our God. We continue on page 105, bottom of the top paragraph. Mi yidmelach, mi yishvelach, mi yaroch lach, ha'el hagadol hagibor v'hanora, el elyon konei shamayim v'aretz na'alecha, u'nishabechacha, u'nifa'ercha, u'nivarech et shem kodshecha kamor, l'David barchi nafshi et Adonai, v'chol kiravai et shem kodsho, ha'el b'tatzmot uzecha, hagadol b'ychvod shemecha, hagibor lanetzach b'hanora b'norotecha, hamelech ha'yoshev, al kisei ram v'nisa. That is our warm-up service for this morning, and I wanted to say thank you both to Jason and Scott for making such beautiful music with me, putting the Zimra in Pesuke de Zimra. There we go. And now we're going to continue with Shacharit, beginning second to last paragraph. Shochenat marom v'kadosh shemo. Befi sharim titalal, uv'divrei tzadikim titbarach, uv'elshon chasidim titromam, uv'kerev kedoshim titkadash, uv'makalot rivavot amcha beit Yisrael berina. Shekin chovat kol hayitzurim lefanecha, Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu, lehodot la'alel l'shabeach, lefaer l'romim lahader, levarech la'alei u'lekales, hakol divrei shirot v'tishbechot David ben Yishai, avdecha meshichecha. Please rise. Yishtabach shimcha la'ad malkeinu, ha'el hamelech hagadol hakadosh b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Birachot v'hodahot me'atav yad olam, baruch atah Adonai. Hail melech gadol batishbachot, el hahodahot, adon haniflaot, habocher b'shirei zimra, melech elchei ha'olamim. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalmad nivra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayedechol beit Yisrael, b'adol b'zman kariv, v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah v'varach, le'olam olamei almayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpar v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei deku d'sham. V'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbichata v'nechemata, damiran bi'alma, v'imru amen. Barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Yotzer or uvorech choshech, oseh shalom uvoreh et hakol.
Amen.
והכל יודוך, והכל ישבחוך, והכל יאמרו אין קדוש כאדוני. We're on the bottom paragraph of 107, soon to sing El Adon. Ein kerkecha v'ein zulatecha, hefes biltecha u'midom elach. Ein kerkecha Adonai Eloheinu ba'olam hazeh, v'ein zulatcha malkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba. Hefes biltecha golenu limot ha'mashiach, v'ein dom elecha moshienu. Litchiyat HaMetim, page 108.
El Adon, kol hamasim, baruch u'mevorach b'kol haneshama.
Godlo v'tuvo ma'alei olam da'at v'runa zol v'imoto. HaMikael, Achayot HaKodesh, v'nehedot, ala merkava, zechut u'mishon, l'ifniso, chesed v'rachamim l'ifnei chaloto, tolim v'hurot shebara Eloheinu yitzhara v'dan u'bina u'maskel, kolach v'chulam na'at v'moed, v'yom Moshe v'kerem tevel, v'leim v'v'im noga, na'ez ziva v'chol, z'meim v'tzeta v'zazim v'voa, osim v'yema v'tzotona, v'er v'chavod no, t'ishmo tola, v'rina l'zecher malchuto, hara l'shemesh v'yizra'or, ra'am v'hin kitzura l'havana, Bayom Ashvid Allah, Vayeshav al Kisei Kivodo, Tiferet Atali Yom HaMenucha, Nekarali Yom HaShabbat. Mizmor Shir Yom HaShabbat, Tov Lehodot Ladonai, Lefichach Yifaru Yifaru. B'Yom Shabbat Kodesh Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Yitkadash, Zichracha Malkeinu Yitmar. Titbarach Tzorenu Malkeinu v'go Aleinu Borei Kedoshim Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu Yotzer Mishartim. We're on page 110. Kulam Ahuvim, Kulam Birurim, Kulam Giburim, V'chulam Osim B'mo V'yira Ritzon Konam, V'chulam Porchim et Bihem B'Kedusha, U'B'Torah B'Shira V'Zimra, U'Mivarchim U'Mishabachim U'Mifarim U'Maritzim, U'Makdishim U'Mamlichim et Shema El HaMelech HaGadol, HaGibor V'Hanora Kadoshu, V'chulam Mekablim Aleihem O Malchut Shamayim Zeh Mizeh, V'notnim Reshut Zeh Lazeh, L'Hakdish Liotzram V'Nachad Ruach, V'Safa V'Ravdim HaKadosha, Kulam Ki Acharonim V'Yomrim B'Yira, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevot, Melech Haaretz Kivodo. V'Ufanim v'Chayot HaKodesh Rash Gadol Mitnasim Liumat Zrafim Liumatam Mishavchim V'Yomrim Baruch Kevod Adonai Nimkomo Leil Baruch Nimot Yitenu L'Melech Chai V'Kayam. To praiseworthy God, they sweetly sing in song. They celebrate the living, enduring God. For God is unique, doing mighty deeds, creating new life, championing justice, sowing righteousness, reaping victory, bringing healing, awesome in praise, sovereign of wonders. God in his goodness renews creation day after day. So sang the psalmist. Praise the creator of great lights, for God's love endures forever. Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir, Or Chadash al Zion Ta'ir, V'nizkech lanu meira leoro, Baruch atah Adonai,
Shema.
Yotzer HaMeorot.
Amen.
So we transition from our incredible humility as we recognize the miracle of creation day after day and transition to the miracle of revelation day after day as we sing Ahava Rabbah on page 111.
Ahava Rabbah Avtanu Adonai Eloheinu Chemla Gedola V'Tzeira Chemlat Aleinu Avinu Malkeinu Ba'avur Avoteinu Shebatchu Becha Avinu Malkeinu V'telamdem Chukei Chaim Ken techanenu utlamdenu Avinu Ha'ava Rachaman Rachem Aleinu V'ten belibeinu Le'avin Ul'askil Lishmoa Lilamod U'lilamed Lishmo Ve'lasot U'l'kayem et kol divrei Talmud Toratecha b'ava V'ha'el b'neinu et Toratecha V'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha V'yached levaveinu V'avar yirah et shemecha V'lo nevosh Le'olam va'ed V'lo nevosh Le'olam va'ed Ki b'shem Kadshecha Hagadol v'hanora b'atachnu Nagila v'nismecha Nagila v'nismecha B'shuatecha.
As we gather our seat, we think about how our homeland represents the one place in the world where Jews scattered all over the world can gather in safety and as one family.
Avienu le'shalom al ba'kamfot haaretz v'tolicheinu komimiyot le'ahotenu ki el po eshuata ובנו בחרת מכל המלשון וקרבתנו שמחה גדול שמענו סמל לא לך
הבוחר בימו ישראל ביאהבה.
Amen.
Page 112. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'yahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha
b'chol nafshecha
ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך
היום על לבביך
ושיננתם לבניך
ודיברת בם
בשבתך בביתך
ובלכתך בדרך ובשבתך ובקומך
וקשרתם להיות על ידיך
והיו לטוטפות בעיניך
וכתבתם
המזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
והיה אם שמוע תשמעו מצוותיי. Take a moment to complete the recitation of the Shema on our own.
משה לאמור דיבר.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם
אשר הוצאתי
אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני
אלוהיכם אמת.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת ויציב ונכון וקיים וישר ונאמן ויאהוב וחביב ונחמד ונעים ונורא וידיר ומתוקן ומקובל וטוב יפה דבר הזה עלינו לעולם ועד אמת אלוהי עולם מלכנו צור יעקב מגן אישנו לדור ודור הוא קיים ושמו קיים וכיסו נכון ומלכות טוב אמונתו לעד קיימת ודבריו חיים וקיימים נאמנים ונחמדים לעד ולמי עולמים על אבותינו ועלינו על בנינו ועל דורותינו ועל כל דורות זרע ישראל עבדיך על הראשונים ועל האחרונים דבר טוב וקיים לעולם ועד אמת ואמונה חוק ולא יעבור אמת שאתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצרנו צור ישועתנו פודנו מצילנו מעולם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם המגן ומושיע לבניהם אחריהם בכל דור ודור. We're at the top of 114. Tehilot le'el elyon baruch hu mevorach Moshe u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha Bailim Adonai mi chamocha חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך שפת הים יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ובדך תנומך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני
Baruch Shu Shmo.
Israel. I know it's not normally the custom at Temple Beth Emet, but we're going to begin the Shacharit Amidah together. We're going to daven pages 115b and the Kedusha together, and then we'll complete the recitation of the Amidah on our own. Please rise. Adonai Sivatai Tivtach Ufi Agi Tehilatecha. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot Umevi Goel Livnei B'neihem L'man Shemo B'Yahava Melech Ozer Ufokein U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'Fokein Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Metim Atah Rav LaHoshia Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed
Mechayei Meitim Berachamim Rabim Zomer Noflim Rofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Bal Givurot Umidom Elach Melech Memit Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'neman Atalach Hayot Meitim Baruch Atah Adonai
Shema.
Mechayeh HaMeitim 116 נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום ככתוב על יד נביאך וכרזל זאב ימר
קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך כל הארץ כבודו
קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו
כל רצון גדול אדיר חזק מספרים כל
אז בכל רעש גדול אדיר וחזק משמיעים קול מתנשאים לעומת שרפים לעומתם ברוך יאמרו
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו
במקומך מלכנו צופר
ממקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו כי מחכים אנחנו לך מתי תמלוך בציון בקרוב בימינו לעולם ועד תמלוך Yerushalayim Ircha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ulenetzach Netzachim, V'yenenu Tirena Malchutecha, Kadavar Amor B'shirei Uzecha, Ayudei David, Mashiach Tzidkecha,
ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלייך ציון לדור ודור.
Imloch
הללויה.
Adonai le'olam Elohayich Zion ledor vador, hallelujah. Ledor vador, nagid God lecha, ulenetzach nitzachim, kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu, mipinu, lo yamush, le'olam va'ed, ki el melech gadol, v'kadosh ata, ki el melech gadol, v'kadosh ata, baruch ata Adonai,
Baruch hu Baruch Shemo.
Ha'el hakadosh.
Amen.
Yismach Moshe b'matnach elko. Lefanecha, Adonai tzuri, vegoali, Adonai tzuri, vegoali. page 138. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalmadi raki rutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechonu v'yamechonu v'chaydechol beit Yisrael. V'agala v'yizman kariv v'yimru.
Amen.
Yeheshmei
Yeshmei Rabba mevarach.
Mevarach.
La'olam ulal me'almaya. Yitbarach.
Barach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha.
Brichu.
Berichu li'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata daviran bi'alma v'imru.
Amen.
Titkabal tzolot hon v'adon dechol Yisrael kodam v'honi v'ishmaya v'imru. Amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Oseh shalom v'imromav v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Well, thank you. That wraps up our Shacharit service. We have a lot to do in our Torah service this morning. And just want to, by way of orientation, we begin a new book of the Torah today, the book of Numbers. And we're going to talk a little bit about how the book of Numbers, it's called the book of Numbers from the from the Greek translation, because throughout the book of Numbers, there's a number of censuses taken to count the number of Israelites that are in the desert. First, we start with, who's still there, getting ready to march as the Mishkan is going to move forward in the desert as we make our way to the Holy Land, which really should only be a couple of months' journey. It ends up being much longer than that, and of course, because one whole generation has to die out and another generation has to come in, again, we take another counting at the end, and the counting is complicated because, on the one hand, there's a lot of promises in the Torah that our numbers, that Abraham is going to spawn a people that is going to be so numerous that they can't be counted, and yet at the end of the Torah, in the book of Deuteronomy, we learned that not only are we going to always, we're a tiny people, even by Deuteronomy, before we get into the land, but we, for the rest of history, are going to be a tiny people. And if anybody read the Pew Report that came out both just now in 2021 and back in 13, we are the tiniest of people. And I just want to recommend, if you want to sort of get a picture in the scope of all world, in the human population, there's a wonderful movie called Tribe. And if you can Google it, it's by Moxie Films, and it really shows that if you look at the pie chart of all human beings, we're not even a dot. We're not even a dot in the smallest piece of pie. That's how small we are. But so anyway, the numbers counting. So on the one hand, counting is very important. It looks like a lot of people, but what's the vision? What's the hope? What's the truth? And what's in between is the story of the Jewish people. But without further ado, I want to invite Scott to open the ark for us in just a moment, but I invite you to rise. We're going to sing Ein Kamocha on page 139. Ein Kamocha va'Elohim Adonai v'ein kemasecha Malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imoch le'olam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, av harachamim, eitiv avirtzoncha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, Ki v'cha levad batachnu, Melech el ram v'nisa Adon olamim. Open both. Vayehi bin soah as we stand in front of the ark with it open, we are going to turn to page 149 and recite the prayer for the state of Israel, both in Hebrew and in English. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael, V'goalo. Avinu, Avinu, Sheba Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael, V'goalo. Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Semichat Geulatenu, Hagen Aleha be'evrat chastecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shalomecha, Ushlach Orcha va'amitcha l'rasheha, Sareha v'yoatzeha, V'tachneim be'etza tova milfanecha, Chazek et yedei meginei eretz kodshenu, V'hanchilem Eloheinu Yeshua, Va'ateret nitzachon ta'atreim, V'natata shalom ba'aretz, V'simchat olam liyoshveha, V'nomar amen. Avinu Shebashamayim, rock and redeemer of the people Israel, bless the state of Israel with its promise of redemption. Shield it with your love. Spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants, all its inhabitants with lasting joy. And we say, Amen. Be be'ana rachetz, ve'lish me'kadisha, kadisha yakira, anaymar tushbechan, be'ana rachetz, be'ana rachetz, ve'lish me'kadisha, kadisha yakira, anaymar tushbechan, yehi ra'ava kodamach, tetiftach libi bioraita, v'tashli mishalin delibi, v'liba dechol amach Yisrael, l'tavul chayim v'lishlam. Amen. And Scott and Jason will repeat after me. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
And you may close the ark. Acclaim Adonai with me, and let us exalt God together. Yours, Adonai, is the greatness, the power and splendor. Yours is the triumph and majesty, for all in heaven and on earth is yours. Yours, Adonai, is supreme sovereignty. Exalt Adonai, worship God, who is holy. Exalt Adonai, our God, and bow towards God's holy mountain. Adonai, our God, is holy. May the merciful one show mercy to the people he has always sustained, remembering his covenant with our ancestors. May God deliver us from evil times, restrain the impulse within us to do evil, and grace our lives with enduring deliverance. May God answer our petition with an abundant measure of kindness and compassion. I invite you to be seated. So what's going to happen is now I want to just talk a little bit about our Torah reading today, and how we're going to. I'm dedicating each of the 7 aliyot to one of the lower sefirot in the Tree of Life, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, as this is we're just ending the counting of the Omer. And then what I'm going to do is we'll talk a little bit, we'll have a little Devar Torah after the Torah reading before Musaf. But, so let's just talk about the book of Numbers. As you know, if the end of the book of Leviticus was what we call the Holiness Code. And in fact, it's the blueprint. The first part of Leviticus is really the blueprint for the priestly sect on how they're going to conduct their business in the Mishkan. It's much more than a how-to manual, but that's kind of what it is. And the second part of Leviticus is for the people. You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. It's repeated again and again, and then what's expounded in is how we live that ideal. So if that's what that is, one way to understand the book of Numbers is that just like the ideal would be that Abraham would have so many descendants that you can't count them, but the reality is that we're always going to be really tiny partly because of forces eliminating us from without, but also forces eliminating us from within, right? We're always our own worst enemy in so many ways. So too the book of Numbers is kind of like the holiness code gone awry. It's the people Israel making one horrible decision after another, God being angry beyond God's wildest imagination, and yet sticking around, Lord knows why, and making sure that we are ushered, new generation, to the precipice of the Jordan River, and then Moses dies and we have to figure it out, and then that begins the next, body of Jewish literature. And for those of you who are Bible lovers like myself, that same comparison of ideal versus reality is kind of the book of Joshua, which is sort of like Joshua leads them into land, they conquer the land, they do so, they all get their land. So, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And then the book of Judges, where literally the Israelites are eating their own young because they have no leader, and it's just mayhem. So, those are the two contradictions. So everything about Israelite history is both, the best and the worst. And of course, the truth is somewhere in between. But so we begin the book of Numbers, if you have a Chumash with you, on page 769. And the first part is they're taking a census of the house of Israel, only of men, of course, over a certain age, by tribe, so that we can know how many fighting forces we have, which is really interesting that that's what they're focused on. Even before, yes, we were attacked by Amalek when we left Egypt, and I guess there's anticipation but it's really for when we get to the land and we have to fight and get rid of the Jebusites and the Hittites and the Hivites and the Thesites and whatever, that we're going to go in and we're going to be able to do that, and this is how many people. We begin our reading today, this is what's so interesting to me, chapter 2 is the breakdown for today, and that begins on page 774. And this is talking about, what we're going to learn today is how the Israelites camped around the tent. So now it's not how many fighting forces, but it's how they're going to march, how they're going to walk, and everything like that. That doesn't seem so interesting at first glance, but it kind of is if you look. Because the first aliyah, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "The Israelites shall camp each within his standard, under the banners of his ancestral house, each camp around the tent of meeting at a distance." So the guy in front, who would you think, camped in front or the east side? The east is the front, right? We're always going, my heart turns towards the east, wherever we are, is the standard division of Judah. Because Judah ends up being the primary tribe, and that's, we are named after Judah, troop by troop. And then it says who the chieftain of the Judahites are, but who's with Judah? Great question.
We have Yissachar, and we have Zevulun. And what many people might not know is that both Yissachar and Zevulun are the two youngest children of Leah. So these guys are camped by their mothers. It's so fascinating how, even though women aren't mentioned anywhere here, it's all about the men, the men, the men, the men, the men. However, the women are really actually the driving force. And what's interesting is that Judah, camped on the east is Judah with the last two children of Leah, Yissachar and Zevulun, who in the tribe of 12 are number 9 and 10. On the south, the next is Reuben, who's the first child of Leah. So it's Leah. I'll give you a hint already. I'll tell you. It's Leah, Rachel, and then the two concubines, which is also really interesting. The concubines get the last side. But Zilpah and Bilhah. So then it's Reuben with Shimon, but it's not Levi. What's interesting is it's Gad, because Gad, or Gad, as I would say from Detroit, Gad is one of the children of Zilpah, who is Leah's servant. So it's two tribes of Leah, and you're just going to learn how they're camped. And then what's in the third Aliyah, we're going to learn who's on the west. It's Ephraim and Manasseh, who are really Joseph, right? And then the tribe of Benjamin. So, because Rachel only had two sons, Joseph and Benjamin, but Joseph is often referred to as Ephraim and Manasseh. So that's who's going to be on the west. That's Rachel. And finally on the north, the division is Dan, who is Bilhah's son, and Naphtali. And this is what I love. The tribe of Asher is a crossover. Asher in many ways, and there's a lot of midrashim about this, serves as the tribe that is sort of the bridge between a lot of generations and a lot of people. Even though he is the child of Zilpah, which is Leah, he hangs out with the children of Bilhah. So he bridges both Leah and Rachel. That's what we're going to find out. And then we learn that the Levites get to hang out with everybody because they have no land of their own and they sort of march around and whatever. And that's what we're going to read today. And so our aliyot today are going to be in honor of the Sefirot of the Kabbalah. And I don't have time to really explain them. And if you're like me, I'm not much of a mystic. But I really do think that the world is so crazy right now, in every way and in every corner, that sometimes you just have to turn it over and realize that our rationale just can't get us where we need to go. And sometimes really trying to channel the forces that are sort of not within our rational grasp sometimes needs to be where we go. So our first aliyah today is going to be dedicated to the Sephirah of Chesed, which is kindness, and the attributes of kindness of Chesed are loving grace, free giving, loving of God, and inspiring vision. So that is where we want to set our intention for the first aliyah. And we are on page 774, verses, chapter 2, verses 1 through 9. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe v'Aharon lemor, Ish al diglu be'otot leveit avotam, Yachanu b'nei Yisrael, mineged, saviv la'ohel moed, Yachanu, v'achonim ke'edma mizracha, degel machane Yehuda letzivotam, V'nasi livnei Yehuda Nachshon ben Aminadav, Utzva'o ufekudehem arba'a v'shivim elef v'shesh meot, V'hachonim alav matei Yisachar, V'nasi livnei Yisachar Netanel ben Tzuar, Utzva'o ufechudav arba'a v'chamishim elef v'arba meot, Mate Zivulun, Venasi Livnei Zivulun, Eliav ben Chelon. Utzva'o ufekudav shiva v'chamishim elef arba meod. Kol hapikudim lemachane Yehuda. Me'at elef u'shmonim elef v'sheshet alafim v'arba meod litzivotam rishona Yisau.
Nice.
Thank you, Scott. Scott is going to read the next aliyah, which is verses 10 through 16 in English for us. And
I can try.
this aliyah is going to be sort of dedicated to the Sephirah of Gevurah. And I just want to sort of, I'm going to use, I don't know if you can see me, I hope you can hear me, my body as the Sephirot, but the very top Sephirah, which is Keter, it's the unknowable. It's the crown on the Torah that we can't even really begin to understand all the deepest meanings of Torah. We can only work at the lower levels and understand it to the best of our ability, like we're doing right now. And then there's Bina and Chochmah, and then there's Da'at. And of course, that's really sort of understood by Lurianic Kabbalah, that those are the upper realms of how we could begin to access the unknowable. And Chabad is the acronym for Chochmah, Bina, and Da'at. And that's sort of beyond our understanding, but a lot of the Chabad theology is based on Lurianic Kabbalah, but we're focusing on the lower seven, which are the attributes that we can begin to sort of tap into. So first we start with loving kindness, but they say that loving kindness really feeds Gevurah, which is severity, strength, discipline, judgment, withholding, and awe of God. And so to only have discipline is to not really understand that discipline without loving kindness isn't true discipline. And our second aliyah, Scott will read for us, is verses, we dedicate that to Gevurah, verses 10 through 16.
Should I try it?
No, read in English.
On the south, the standard of the division of Reuben, troop by troop. Chieftain of the Reubenites, Elizur, son of Shedeur. His troop, as enrolled, 46,500. Camping next to it, the tribe of Simeon. Chieftain of the Simeonites, Shalumiel, son of Zurishadai. His troop, as enrolled, 59,300. And the tribe of Gad. Chieftain of the Gadites, Eliasaph, son of Ruel. His troop, as enrolled, 46,650. The total enrolled in the division of Reuben, 151,450 for all troops. These shall march second. Then, midway between the divisions, the tent of meeting, the division of the Levites shall move as they camp, so they shall march, each in position by their standards.
Thank you, Scott. So there's the Levites. Then the Levites, which is really interesting, think about that. Betoch hamachanot ka'asher yachanu ken ya'asu. The Levites were everybody's conduit to God, and so too they were almost like the sinew that held the group together. But just notice that the children of Leah sort of stayed as a unit next to each other. And our next aliyah, the third aliyah, which is verses 17 through 24, will be designated to Tiferet, which is beauty. And the understanding of beauty in Lurianic Kabbalah is the balance between chesed and gevurah in compassion. And if you think about that, think about parenting, right? You just, you love your children so much, and you just, you want to nurture them in the right way. You must discipline them, because that's really how we learn how to navigate life, because we don't know, but we do so with loving kindness, and that is true beauty. It's the balance of chesed and gevurah. And so here we go, verses 17 through 24. ונעשה אוהל מועד, מחנה הלוויים בתוך המחנות, כאשר יחנו כן יישאו איש על ידו לדגליהם. דגל מחנה אפרים לצבאותם ימה, ונשיא לבני אפרים אלישמע בן עמיהוד, וצבאו ופקודיהם 40,500, ועליו מטה מנשה, ונשיא לבני מנשה גמליאל בן פדצור, וצבאו ופקודיהם 32,200, ומטה בנימין, ונשיא לבני בנימין אבידן בן גדעוני, וצבאו ופקודיהם 35,400, כל הפקודים למחנה אפרים 108,100, לצבאותם 30 יישאו. Thank you. I miss reading out of the Torah, I have to say. So the fourth Aliyah, which is going to be how the children of Zilpah and Bilhah camped on the north, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, is dedicated to Netzach, which is associated with eternity, perpetuity, victory, and the ability to endure. So all of the, and that's, again, all of these, you'll see how it's balanced with the next Sephirah, the next sort of emanation. But again, so think about eternity and truly, we are still here as a people, and that is a great miracle. So this is verses 25 through 31, and Scott will read for us.
On the north, the standard of the division of Dan, troop by troop. Chieftain of the Danites, Ahiezer, son of Amishadai. His troop is enrolled, 62,700. Camping next to it, the tribe of Asher, chieftain of the Asherites. Pagiel, son of Ochran. His troop is enrolled, 41,500. And the tribe of Naphtali, chieftain of the Naphtalites. Ahira, son of Enan. His troop as enrolled 53,400. The total enrolled in the division of Dan, 157,600. These shall march last by their standards. Those are the enrollments of the Israelites by ancestral houses. The total enrolled in the divisions for all troops, 603,550. These are the Levites, however, were not recorded among the Israelites as the Lord had commanded Moses. The Israelites did accordingly, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. So they camped by their standards, and so they marched, each with his clan according to his ancestral house.
Yasher Koff, Scott. Scott's an overachiever. He actually also read the fifth Aliyah, but that's okay. I'm going to read it in Hebrew. And the fifth Aliyah is dedicated to the emanation of Hod, which is known as splendor, but really symbolizes withdrawal, surrender, and sincerity, which is so interesting. Think about that, how splendor is associated with surrender and withdrawal. So again, Netzach and Hod they balance each other. Perpetuity, victory, and endurance are managed in equal measure by withdrawal, surrender, and sincerity. And what's really interesting is that, these emanations, even though many of us were not raised to really learn about the ideas of the tree of life and Kabbalah and how these qualities influence each other, they're all over our liturgy, because we think about Lecha Adonai Hagedula, v'hagevura, v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach, v'hahod. And, you know, they're mentioned many places elsewhere, and particularly in the Torah service, a lot of Kabbalistic liturgy made its way into the regular liturgy, not the least of which is Barich Shemay, which concludes with Be'ana Rachetz. So anyway, this next aliyah, which I'll read in Hebrew, is dedicated to Hod, splendor. Ele pikudei v'nei Yisrael leveit avotam, kol pikudei hamachanot l'tzivotam, shesh me'ot elef ושלושת אלפים וחמש מאות וחמישים והלוויים לא התפקדו בתוך בני ישראל כאשר ציווה אדוני את משה ויעשו בני ישראל ככל אשר ציווה אדוני את משה כן חנו לדגליהם וכן נשאו איש למשפחותיו על בית אבותיו. So the next, thank you, the next aliyah, which is the sixth aliyah, which will be chapter 3, verses sixth aliyah, verses 1 through 4, which I will also read in Hebrew, is fascinating. So fascinating that it's worth talking about, and then I'll tell you what we're going to do. It says, this is the line of Aaron and Moses at the time that the Lord spoke with Moses on Mount Sinai. So it says the line of Aaron and Moses. So you're expecting them to name 6 children because Aaron had 4, Moses had 2. We learn about that when Zipporah comes to meet Moses, as he's, already in Egypt trying to kick Pharaoh's tuchus, right? So it says, these are the names of Aaron's sons, Nadav the firstborn and Avihu, Eleazar and Itamar. Those were the names of Aaron's sons, the anointed priests who were ordained for the priesthood. But Nadav and Avihu died by the will of the Lord when they offered alien fire before the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai, and they left no sons. So it was Eleazar and Itamar who served as priests in the lifetime of their father Aaron. So what happened to Gershom and Eliezer? Right? We know that he had them, and there's something written about that, but it's kind of glossed over, even in our midrashic literature. But I think that there is one midrash that says that Moses, pleaded to God to let one of his sons succeed him instead of Joshua, and God said, really, they're not worthy. I mean, they're fine, but who's really worthy to inherit the mantle of your bravery is, of your leadership is Joshua, and that's one of the ways that the Torah sort of indicates that great leadership is not necessarily dynastic. Some things are dynastic. The priesthood is dynastic, but prophecy does not need to be dynastic. It's kind of a fascinating statement. And actually, we'll say that, but this last aliyah, and that we're dedicating to Yesod, which is foundation. And listen to this. It's so perfect that it talks about Moses and Aaron in Yesod. Connecting to the task to accomplish, wholly remembering coherent knowledge. So if we say that if Moses was the transmitter of Torah, connecting the task to accomplish, that Moses and Aaron were the people that got us from point A, which was slavery, to point B, which was the precipice of freedom. They certainly did so. And finally, this final aliyah, which is chapter 3, verses 5 through 13, is dedicated to Malchut, the lowest emanation, but for us, really, as human beings with our limited capacity, the only one that we can totally grasp and it's associated with exaltedness, balanced with humility. So true kingship isn't just exaltedness, it's exaltedness balanced with humility. And who exemplifies that better than Moshe Rabbeinu? And it says all the other Sefirot flow into Malchut, meaning loving kindness, strength and discipline, beauty, victory and endurance, and yet withdrawal and sincerity, and connecting everything together. All that knowledge is what fills the emanation of exaltedness and humility. And the way Kabbalah likes to draw a relationship, it's like the moon has no light of its own, and so sometimes it's diminished and sometimes it's full because it's based on it's really based on the sun and the placement, but you could say that it is a reflection of everything going on around it, and it is the final revelation of the divine. It is both, Malchut is both the receiver and the giver. Malchut is the connection between us and us being able to channel the holy. And so this final aliyah is dedicated to that. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, Hakrev et mate Levi, v'ha'amadeta oto livnei Aaron hakohen, v'shertu oto, v'shamru et mishmarto, ve'et mishmeret koida livnei ohel moed, la'avod et avodat hamishkan, v'shamru et kol klei ohel moed, ve'et mishmeret b'nei Yisrael, la'avod et avodat hamishkan, v'natata et haleviim li'aharon u'levanav, Nitunim heimalo me'et b'nei Yisrael, v'yet Aharon v'yet banav tifkod, v'shamru et kehunatam, v'hazar et hakarev yumat, v'yedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, v'ani hinei, lakachti et halevim, mitoch b'nei Yisrael tachat kol bechor peterechem mi b'nei Yisrael v'hayu li halevim ki li kol bechor b'yom hakoti kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim hikdashti li kol bechor b'Yisrael Me'adam ad behema liyu ani Adonai. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I hereby take the Levites from among the Israelites in the place of all firstborn, the first issue of the womb among the Israelites. The Levites shall be mine, for every firstborn is mine. At the time that I smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, I consecrate every firstborn in Israel, man and beast, to myself, to be mine and the Lord's. So that, my friends, is the Torah reading for today. Before we get a chance to hear the beautiful Haftarah read as it should be by Jason with his beautiful British accent, we're going to do a Misha Beirach L'cholim. We're going to do a prayer for healing for all those who are ill. So if there are people in your that you are wanting to say a prayer for healing for, I invite you to say their names aloud. And I want to just acknowledge the Misha Beirach list at Temple Beth Emet. Bernice Beckerman, Hank Beckett, Judy Beiser, Shirley Burko, Erwin Chapnick, Chaya Cohen, Barbara Erler, Bernice Green, Myung Ha, Maxine Kaplowitz, Jim Levy, Esther Prehar, Nancy Raymond, Fortunette Richard, Jim Rosenfeld, Howie Schwed, Claire Weinberg, Sheldon Weisbach, Chad Wheeler, Itamar Ben Chayazissa Veruven, Shimshon Lev ben Chaya Rivka, V'yonkel Eliah, Nazanal Dialmeh, Shlomo Velvel ben Itka, David ben Chaya Mendel, Elisheva bat Chana v'Yoel, Esther Malka Chana bat Yeruth, Asher Noach ben Minya, Chana Fega bat Razel. Want to say Misha Beirach for Sheila and Mike Lefkowitz, and for anybody that you're praying for.
Yeah, I have Yehuda Leib ben Malka, Chaya Avigal bat Yehudit, Malka bat Leah. I think that's it.
And Misha Beirach for Bev Steinberg. So please, and for all those who we have forgotten, who we are going to include in our prayers, and also for David Weiderman. Please join us in singing this prayer.
Misha Berach Avoteinu Mikol HaBaracha Limotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage. Make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Makor Baracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of the body, renewal of the spirit, and let us say Amen.
Refuah Shlema to all those who need our healing, both in this country and in the land of Israel and all over the world. And we should remember that there are so many hundreds of thousands of people still struggling with COVID-19. It is, although we are coming out of a very dark time, that is not the case world over, and we do not forget that. So I invite you to turn to the Haftarah for Bamidbar. And we're on page 787. Jason's going to read, but I'm just, the connection to the Haftarah begins, this is all certainly a reference to counting. If you look at, this is from Hosea, who's just really been one of those totally battered prophets that goes through the ringer on behalf of the Israelite people. But it begins, the number of the people Israel shall be like that of the sands of the sea, which cannot be measured or counted. And of course, we were just counted in numbers, and there's some other, the other relationship is that it talks about how misbehaved the people Israel have been towards God, which is really what the book of Numbers is about. But I'll just read the first verse and then I'll close. V'haya mispar b'nei Yisrael kecho hayam asher lo yimad v'lo yisafer v'haya bimkom asher ye'amer lahem lo ami atem ye'amer lahem b'nei El Chai.
Rebuke your mother, rebuke her, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. And let her put away her harlotry from her face, and her adultery from between her breasts. Else I will strip her naked and leave her as on the day she was born, and I will make her like a wilderness, render her like a desert land, and let her die of thirst. I will also disown her children, for they are now a harlot's brood. In that their mother has played the harlot, that she conceived them and has acted shamelessly, because she thought, I will go after my lovers, who supply my bread and my water, my wool, my linen, my oil, and my drink. Assuredly, I will hedge upon her roads with thorns, and raise walls against her, and she shall not find her path. Pursue her lovers as she will not overtake them, and seek them as she may, she will never find them. Then she will say, I will go and return to my first husband, for then I fared better than now. And she did not consider this. It was I who bestowed upon her the new grain, the wine, and the oil, I who lavished silver on her, and gold, which they used for Baal. Assuredly, I will take back my new grain in its time, and my new wine in its season, and I will snatch away my wool and my linen that served to cover her nakedness. Now I will uncover her shame in the very sight of her lovers, and none shall save her from me, and I will end all her rejoicing, her festivals, new moons, Sabbaths, festive seasons, and I will lay waste her vines and her fig trees, which she thinks are a fee she received from her lovers. I will turn them into brushwood, and beasts of the field shall devour them. Thus I punish her for the days of the Baalim, on which she brought them offerings, when, decked with earrings and jewels, she would go after her lovers, forgetting me, declares the Lord. Assuredly, I will speak coaxingly to her, and lead her through the wilderness, and speak to her tenderly. I will give her vineyards for and there, and the valley of Achor as a ploughland of hope. There she shall respond in the days of her youth, when she came upon the land of Egypt. And in that day, declares the Lord, you will call me Ishi, and no more will you call me Baali, for I will remove the names of the Baalim from her mouth, and they shall never more be mentioned by name. In that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the creeping things of the ground. I will also banish bow, sword, and war from the land. Thus I will let them lie down in safety, and I will espouse you forever. I will espouse you with righteousness and justice, and with goodness and mercy, and I will espouse you with faithfulness. Then you shall be devoted to the Lord.
V'erastich li leolam, v'erastich li b'tzedek, u'v'mishpat, u'v'chesed v'rachamim, v'erastich li b'emunah, v'yadat et Adonai. Thank you, Jason. That was truly beautiful. And you know, I couldn't help but think as you were reading, no wonder they make bar mitzvah children learn how to chant these haftarot in Hebrew, because, you know, think about how many gazillions of children have had to sing this haftarah, and it's actually incredibly disturbing. And, you know, and of course, because when we don't really understand, we're like, you can talk about like the worst thing in the world, and you can go, Lachain, da-da-da-da-da-da. So, I mean, on the one hand, it's wonderful to learn how to chant our sacred texts, but it's even, I think, in so many ways more important to understand that what God is saying is that no matter how bad things get, and no matter how far we stray, that there's always the opportunity to come back.
I think that's right. I think that this Haftarah, in light of what's happening in Israel today, is very difficult to hear. For me, it's very difficult to hear.
Say a word about that, and then I would love it if you would sing Jerusalem, if you would lead us in.
I'd love to, yeah. It's easy to think of Israel as like a two-dimensional place, like miles away, and there's a war going on, and they're fighting in our name, and the good people of Israel, the super Jews, are fighting in our name, and there's something biblical going on, which I guess, you know. The thing that we've forgotten, of course, is that Canaan wasn't empty. It's never been empty. It's not empty now.
Correct. and we have to figure out how to live with the people who live in
We
Canaan.
do. We absolutely do. So all the camps of Judah and Benjamin and Reuben and everything else, very good. We've got to defend ourselves and march on. But it's not empty, and we haven't figured that out yet. And this Haftarah is more than 4,000 years old, and we still... in 2010, is that right? I got married.
Mazel tov, Jason.
Thank you. On Kibbutz Tuval, in Cheshvan of 2010. Kibbutz Tuval is on a hill in the north of Israel. And it's peopled by Brits and Americans and South Africans, all of whom went there in the shadow of the Holocaust, like the Jews running from slavery in Egypt. And they went and they camped on a hill. And on the hill is an Arab village, Deir al-Assad. And it was trouble for a long time. When I first went there in the early 80s, you couldn't go up the hill on your own. You had to stand at the bottom of the hill and make a phone call to the kibbutz, and they'd come down in an armoured vehicle and take you up, because things were not good between the kibbutz and the Arab village. And over time, that got figured out. The good people of the village and the good people of the kibbutz found a way to live together. And for the last 10 years, there's been no guard at the gates of Kibbutz Tuval. No guard. Nobody. You can drive in and out. Anybody can come in and out. There's no guard. No guns. No nothing. That's how good things were a week ago. That's how good things were for 10 years. A week ago. Now, tonight, right now as I speak, my friend Neil is standing on the gates with a gun. I don't think he's held a gun for 10 years. And this is what's happening now for the
That's
people.
right. I mean, that's one, I shared an article, it's called Israel 21st Century. There's an organization called Israel 21st Century, which was created in the second, during the...
If anyone's looking it up, it's Israel 21C.
Okay, it's Israel 21C. And it was created in the very beginning of 2000s with the Second Intifada to sort of highlight all the beautiful things that were going on in Israel when the only PR was what wasn't going right in Israel.
Right.
And it's existed and it's evolved through the years. And the woman who was sharing, was saying that for the first time in her living in Israel, she was feeling afraid, and just because the friendships that had been built over time, and there really seemed to have almost just like something's been, like the scab has been pulled off. There's been something that just happened a week ago. And again, while it's not the same in any way, there's a recollection of what happened when George Floyd was visibly killed on television. It just sort of blew out so much pain lurking with it. People really maybe didn't even talk about. And, my only hope is that this great revelation that things weren't as good as we hoped they were is going to be the fuel that gets us to a better place. Please, God.
Amen.
And please honor us with a song.
So this song was written by Steve Earle. He's an American songwriter, not a Jew. But he went to Israel and he learned a lot about the country, and he wrote this song with David Brozer. I woke up this morning, none of the news was good. Death machines were rumbling on the ground where Jesus stood. The man on my TV told me it had always been that way. There was nothing anyone could do or say. And I almost listened to him. Yes, I almost lost my mind, in my senses again. Looked into my heart to find, I believe that one fine day the children of Abraham will lay down their swords forever in Jerusalem. Well, maybe I'm only dreaming, maybe I'm just a fool, but I don't remember learning how to hate in Sunday school. And somewhere along the way I strayed. I never look back again, but I still can find some comfort now and then. And when the storm comes rumbling in, and I can lay me down, and the drums are drumming again, well, I can't stand the sound, but I believe there'll come a day when the lion and the lamb will lay down in peace forever in Jerusalem. And there'll be no barricades then, there will be no wire or walls. We can wash this blood from our hands, all the hatred from our souls. 'Cause I believe that on that day all the children of Abraham will lay down their swords forever in Jerusalem. Yes, and I believe that on that day the lion and the lamb will lay down in peace forever in Jerusalem.
Thank you so much. So just a few words before we go into the Musaf service. Counting, as I mentioned earlier, is a complicated. It's complicated in Judaism. You know, it's interesting. If there's only 14 million Jews, technically, we're actually like totally countable. It's not. That's actually not that many people, and by some measure, we have finally replaced ourselves from the 6 million that were killed in the Holocaust. And you know, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of just deep remorse, imagining that we might be 40 million people now had that not happened, right? If people had replicated themselves and there'd still been Orthodox communities that had a lot of children and whatever, given that birth rates among highly educated and assimilated people are lower. But be that as it may, we are where we are. So every week, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, the founder of Klal, Center for Leadership and Learning, which is a it's a pluralistic center for gathering for rabbis. He's a great rabbi. He writes a weekly Devar Torah. And this week his Devar Torah was called The Limits of Numbers. And he said, why is there a negative attitude towards counting people? There's actually he says there's a substantive theological issue involved. Each human being is created in the image of God. That means that each of us is of infinite value, equal and unique. And that's the message of the fact that Abraham, one guy, spawned an entire people. It's absolutely right. So counting an individual implies that we have delimited the person. We have established their parameters and can classify them by common characteristics as if people are one type. We can add one to another in a category of population registry, and and what that does is, by lumping people together, by making people a statistic, it's a problem. And it also, he says, it constitutes a denial of people's uniqueness. So this was written, I think, in response to the fact that a week ago, or on May 11th, a new Pew study came out about Jewish Americans. Remember, the revolutionary study that came out in 2013 taught us a lot of stuff. And on the one hand, the news is very depressing, and on the other hand, it's not so depressing, because the truth is, anything is possible as long as there's a couple of Jews left. We all have the potential to be Abraham, and we all need to remember that. So I just wanted to highlight some of the key findings about Jewish Americans in case you wanted to know.
and you can find out where you fit in the lumped together. It says, so just the summary is Jews in the United States on the whole are less religious than the overall public. No kidding. At least by the standard measure used in surveys. But Jewish Americans participate in a wide range of culturally Jewish activities, as well as some religious practices. By the way, that's why I started the Jewish Collaborative, and most of the programming that we do has nothing to do with religion. It really has to do with passions that bring people their self-identity, like their artistry and their commitment to activism and their love of learning and so many other things. I mean, it's just a different gathering motif. So in a new Pew Research report based on surveying 4,718 Jewish American adults between November 19th, 2019 and June 3rd, 2020, we can see they've covered a lot of topics, and here are 10 key findings. Feel free, Jason and Scott, to interject. The size of the adult Jewish population has been fairly stable in percentage terms, while rising in absolute numbers, roughly in line with the growth of the U.S. population. An estimated 2.4% of U.S. adults are Jewish. Okay, in 2013 it was 2.2%. So in absolute numbers, the 2020 Jewish population is 7.5 million, including 5.8 million adults and 1.8 million children. And okay, like the overall U.S. population, Jews appear to be growing more racially and ethnically diverse. And you know, that's a big topic now, Jews of color. There's a branch of United Synagogue that is being formed to make sure that they are starting to really to meet the needs of Jews of color and other ethnicities. And the Reform movement's been doing that a while. Every convention that I've gone to in the last 5 years has had a component of that. Around 9 in 10 Jewish American adults identify as non-Hispanic whites, while 8 identify as other racial or ethnic categories. Now, among younger Jews, that's a higher percentage. U.S. Jews are less religious than American adults overall. Are you surprised? About 1 in 10 Jewish Americans, 12%, said they attend religious services at least weekly in a synagogue, temple, or less formal setting, like a chavurah or independent minyan, compared with a quarter of U.S. adults who say they attend religious services weekly in a mosque or in a gurdwara or in a church. U.S. Jews are also likely less overall to say that religion is very important, meaning we don't see Judaism as our religion. We see it as our culture or perhaps our ethnicity. And slightly more than half of the Jews say that religion is not at all important in their lives, compared with a third of Americans who say that it is. And even bigger gaps come when it comes to God. A quarter of Jews say they believe in God, whereas 56% of all U.S. adults say this. Number 4, Jewish Americans are staunchly liberal and favor the Democratic Party, but Orthodox Jews are a notable exception, and I would say that Jews in Orange County, Reform and Conservative, are also a notable exception. Not exclusively, but it's just very interesting, depend on where you live. This survey, which was conducted in the run-up to the 2020 presidential election, finds that 71% of Jewish adults are Democrats or independents who lead towards the Democratic Party, but among Orthodox Jews, 3/4 said that they were Republican or leaned that way. And that percentages has been trending up. That is totally weird. And 50% of Orthodox Jews were Republicans or Republican leaners. 3/4 of American Jews think there is more anti-Semitism in the U.S. today than there was 5 years ago. Moreover, just half, 53%, say that as a Jewish person in the U.S., they feel personally less safe than they did 5 years ago. However, the effect on participation in Jewish activities appears to be relatively small. That's interesting. Number 6, a large majority of U.S. Jews say that caring about Israel is either essential or important to being Jewish in terms of what being Jewish means to them. So 6 in 10 say that they are at least somewhat attached to Israel, and those who have been to Israel are especially likely to feel this way. There's a sharp partisan difference in attitudes towards Israel, and at the time of this survey, conducted 14 months into President Trump's administration, Jewish Democrats and leaners were more likely than Jewish Republicans to say that the U.S. was too supportive of Israel, which is interesting. Many of us certainly don't feel that way. Number 7, majorities of U.S. Jews engage in cultural activities like cooking Jewish, sharing holidays with non-Jewish friends, and visiting historical sites. Most say that they engage with Judaism through the Jewish media, through Jewish literature, history, biographies, watching television with Jewish or Israeli themes. Those who are religiously observant in traditional ways also keep dietary laws and report high levels of engagement also in other broad cultural activities. And by the way, I just want to say that, you know, there didn't used to be, like, there is a way to stay Jewish by just identifying with a peoplehood and sort of having this understanding of God, even if you don't, the God you don't believe in. All of the cultural associations really are a product of the last 500 years. And, you know, when you think about the B'nai Yisrael in India, who stayed Jewish all those years because they said Shema, and they've circumcised their children, they didn't have, like, they weren't like democratic leaning. They just believed in this one God. There is a way to identify with God and stay Jewish, even if you don't believe in God or even know what that means. Number 8, younger Jews are more likely than older Jews to identify as Orthodox and more likely to say they do not belong to any particular branch of Judaism. Well, let's unpack that. Jews under 30 appear to take divergent paths. One steeped in traditional religious observance, the other involving little or no religious engagement. Some 17% of U.S. Jews 18 to 29 said they were Orthodox, compared to 3% of Jews ages 65 and older. And at the same time, 41% of young Jewish adults do not identify with any branch of most American Judaism. Go figure that out. That's kind of like as complicated as the Lurianic Kabbalosophy Road, if you want to ask me. Most people in this category are Jews of no religion, and they describe their religion as atheist or agnostic or nothing in particular, although they have a Jewish parent and were raised Jewish and still identify culturally, ethnically because of their family background. Here's a nut that's kind of hard to take. Wait, Scott, I'm going to call on you in a second. Reform and conservative movements, America's still their largest branches, seem to be losing ground with younger generations. 4 in 10 Jews ages 18 to 25 identify as reform or conservative, compared with 7 in 10 Jews who are 65 and older. And that's why when you go to a Reform, Reconstructionist, or conservative synagogue, most people in those services will be baby boomers, absolutely. You will not find a 40-year-old just randomly walking in. Scott, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the whole enterprise of learning about the Jewish people through a set of survey questions that were designed by Pew's research arm that focuses on religion misses so much, because the Jewish religion is so, Jews identify as Jews, and the meaning of the term religion is so different.
Okay, so Scott is just saying that obviously a report like this misses so much, which is actually what Yitz Greenberg's point was. And so I just happen to have here, first of all, anybody can download these articles, but it says, the Pew Jewish Americans in 2020, answers to frequently asked questions, such as, how did you find the Jews in your survey? Did you get a list of synagogue members? How do you know the people that you spoke to are actually Jewish? Who do you count as Jewish? Pew knows that there are a ton of flaws in this. They were just trying to give the best snapshot they could. And one of the most interesting things is that it's all done by mail now. Nobody answers the phone. It was either done by text or mail. They said, we could not get people to, and nobody, do you answer your home phone anymore? I don't, because it's somebody trying to sell me something or whatever. And so this is actually a really interesting document, how they actually acknowledge what you said. Let's go to numbers 9 and 10 and wrap up with the Musaf service. Members of different branches of American Judaism generally do not feel they have a lot in common with one another. That is so true, and they're really speaking about Reform and Orthodox Jews. And it's really interesting. I've seen that, yet only in Orange County is that different, where most of the Chabads, and there are 21 of them, I think, in Orange County, are largely supported by Reform Jews. Don't ask me. However, it's the conservative Jews, all three of us, in Orange County that feel like we can sort of dance between the movements. In a way, in my religious practice, I feel much more at home in an Orthodox synagogue than I would in a Reform synagogue, kinda. But, except that when I hear things that, like offend me because I think they're racist, in an Orthodox shul, which I sometimes hear, I'm going like, why am I here? So, we sort of still are trying to dance at both weddings, and it's complicated. And finally, about 4 in 10 married Jews have a non-Jewish spouse, but intermarriage rates differ within subgroups. For example, intermarriage is almost non-existent among Orthodox Jews. Okay. While nearly half of all non-Orthodox Jews who are married say their spouse is not Jewish, 47%. And it's most common among those who've married in recent years. 61%, okay, listen to this. Among Jewish respondents who got married since the beginning of 2010, 61 have a non-Jewish spouse compared to 18% who got married before 1980. It's also more common among Jews who themselves who are offspring of intermarried parents. Among married Jews who say they have one Jewish parent, 82% have a non-Jewish spouse, compared with 34% who report that both their parents were Jewish. So those are some facts, and what I want to say is, that's all they are, is facts.
Yeah, that's right. I was about to say that. The nature of these kind of surveys is that the data is to put things in boxes. It's a natural human desire to do that. And with Judaism, it's very complicated because we're all living our Judaism, to coin a phrase, in different ways. Neil in the guard's house right now is not a religious Jew, but he's living out. You can't see he's not living out his Judaism, standing there defending his kibbutz, and us standing here in a religious ceremony, and people that do different. I've got to tell you.
But I don't think you guys can hear Jason. I feel bad about that.
So here's a way to live out your Judaism. A friend of mine moved to Florida some years ago, and I didn't hear from him. He's just showed up on Facebook. He's a drag queen. Okay, very Jewish man. Drag queen. His drag name is Minor Setback. That's his drag. And when you look at this woman, couldn't be anything but Jewish. Reminds you of all your aunts from back in the day. Just a complete old Jewish woman. And it's Minor Setback, here I am. Well, is that not a way of playing out your Judaism? I think it is.
Sure is. Absolutely.
Yes.
It's not my way, but it's his way. Or her way.
Right. So I guess I want to conclude this little conversation about the finer and less finer points about lumping us all together, which is that really we all need to find our place in the Jewish story, the story of Jewish continuity, the story of Jewish devotion, whatever that means. And the best we can hope for is that 100 years from now, somebody is still standing up in a progressive minyan somewhere talking about the dilemma of the continuity of the Jewish people as we are today. It's a real privilege, and Shabbat Shalom. I invite you to join me on page 155 with Chatzi Kaddish. Before the Musaf service, we'll daven together on page 116b and 170, and we'll complete the Amidah on our own. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah v'yalmad divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayeichon u'v'yameichon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agalav izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach La'alav la'almei almaya.
Yitbarach.
Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemet ha'kudesha.
Brechu.
B'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran b'yalma v'imru amen.
Amen.
We join together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chavstei Avot, u'Mevi Goel Livnei B'neihem, L'man Shemo B'Yava, Melech Ozer Ufoked, U'Moshio Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham Ufoked Sarah, Atah Gibor Li'olam Adonai, Mechaye Metim Atarav Lahoshia, Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechaye Metim B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim U'Matir Asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, micha mocha bal givurot, umidom melach melech ve'mir machayem atzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atalach hayot metim, baruch atah Adonai, mechayei hametim.
Amen.
Naritzcha v'nakdishcha kesod siach sarfei kodesh, Hamakdishim Shimcha B'Kodesh, Kakatu Hayad Nevi'echa, V'Karazel Zevi Amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech Haaretz Kivodo. Kivodo Malei Olam Mesharatav Shoalim Zelazeh Hayei Mekom Kivodo Liumatam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Kivod Adonai Mimkomo Mimkomo Fuyifen Berachamim Ve'yachonam Ham Yachadim Shemo Erev Avoker Bechol Yom Tamid Pamayim Yahava Shema Omrim Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu. Vehu yashmienu berachamav shenit, shenit li'enei kochai liot lachem Elohim.
Ani Adonai Elohechem.
Ani Adonai Elohechem uvedivrei kodshecha katuv le'mor.
Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohai Etzion ledor v'ador. Hallelujah.
Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohai Etzion ledor v'ador. Hallelujah. Ledor v'ador nagi godlecha, u'netzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu le'yamush le'olam va'ed, ki al melech gadol v'kadosh ata baruch ata Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh. We continue silently, either with our own private meditation or beginning on page 158. Sim shalom ba'olam tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, Amecha. Barchenu avinu avinu, kulanu ki echad, bior panecha, bior panecha. Sim shalom ba'olam, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, Amecha. Kiva or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu Torah chaim v'ahavat chesed u'tzedakah v'rachav v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom v'tov b'einecha levarech et amecha Yisrael b'chol etu v'chol shah b'shlomecha. Sim shalom ba'olam tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, Amecha. Page 181. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah, v'yalma divrak yirutei v'yamliach machlotei b'chayechonu v'yimechonu b'chaydechol beit Yisrael, b'adalav yizman kari v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabah v'barach,
Olam u'l'almei almaya yitbarach.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei kudusha.
Rechu.
Rechu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata v'yiran v'yalma v'yimru.
Amen.
Titkabal tzlot hon, uvod hon dachol Yisrael, kadamavon b'shmaya v'imru.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Yoseh shalom b'romav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru.
Amen.
Jason, you want to lead us in Ein Keloheinu?
Sure,
Great.
happy to. Oh, I see why. You have to turn it on.
Yes,
That's the trick.
tell me a standby switches.
Okay. Here we go. En Keloheinu, En Kadoneinu, En Kemalkeinu, En Kamoshienu, Mi Eloheinu, Mi Kadoneinu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kamoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adoneinu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adoneinu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adoneinu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shechtiru, Avoten Levanecha, Et Ketoret Asami.
We rise for Aleinu.
Leinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, שכינת עוזו ושכינת עוזו בגבהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו עינות, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ ועל הארץ מתחת עינות.
ישבע כל לשון לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ייחר ויקולו, ולכבוד שמך יקר ייתנו ויקבלו כל אמונתך ונמלוך. כמו חודשך יהיו מעט ימלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
Yasher Koach, thank you. Before we prepare to say Kaddish Tov, Mourner's Kaddish, I'd like to read a list of the yortzites that Temple Beth Emet is observing this week. Bertha Israel, Isidore Newman, Robbie Remesh, Robert Solomon, Neil Wasserman, Mamie Nussbaum, Fanny Siegel, Betty Louise Silverman, Ida Steinberg, Anna Pauline Waldman, Ida Babby, Gertrude Breton, Elliot Hillel Glasser, Manya Jerusalem, Max Kahana, Donald Coven, William Spurgel, David Welt, Joseph Deutsch, Joseph Urgievsky, Molly White, Harry Morris Dudnick, Bertha Coleman, Dan Prehar, Eva Halley, Sarah Krieger, Leo Landau, Morris Zaidman, Helen Bondar, Lori Kaufman, Harold Lazan, Alan Seekoff, and Betty Spector. And for those of you who have loved ones who you're remembering who aren't mentioned here, may the memories of all of your loved ones endure as a great blessing and inspiration for you to be your very best self. And Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah.
Amen.
V'alma divra kirutei v'amlich malchutei. V'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. V'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehei shmei Rabba Mevorach le'olam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shemei dekudasha, barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'yal kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru amen. Before we make Kiddush and close with a special song, we have some announcements. First of all, the most exciting announcement is welcome back to Beth Emet. Friday, June 11th is the reopening date for Temple Beth Emet. To mark this auspicious day, they're offering a free boxed supper prior to services. Supper will be at 5:30. Reservations are required, so please call the office to RSVP. Friday night services will begin at 6:30, Now, services will be held outdoors with social distancing, and masks are required. Also, we trust by this date that everybody will have had their COVID-19 vaccinations. We anxiously await your return to the synagogue and hope to see you all soon. And then they also wanted me to thank me for conducting services, and I just want to say,
Thank you,
you're
Rabbi
welcome.
Masha.
I loved it, and
Thank you.
I want to say
Amazing
thank you,
Jason
Jason,
Bennett.
and thank you, Scott, for being here. Wouldn't you agree it was nice to have Scott here, like another thing?
I should be the one to
Very nice.
thank both of you.
It took the pressure off me to have you here.
Okay.
I know.
Thank you.
Um,
I
wom-
enjoyed the service very much.
Women's League is still accepting Count Your Blessings. Here's something important. Erev Shavuot begins Sunday, May 16th, which is like tomorrow night. And you're joining forces, Beth Emet, with the Collaborative and also Temple Isaiah and Congregation Shalom. We're going to begin with actually mincha, weekday mincha at 7 p.m. because it won't be the Chag yet. And then Rabbi Berman's going to do a little teaching, and then we're going to do Festival Mariv. And then I'm going to do a little teaching. I think Eric Dangod, who's in rabbinical school, will do a little teaching. And other people there's going to be some other things that people will share. So, and that'll probably go till about 9 o'clock. So please join us at 7 p.m. tomorrow night for Erev Chag. Have your cheesecake handy or your blintzes. And then again, you'll have services here on Monday, on virtually, on Monday and Tuesday, and I believe they start at 9:30 a.m. And of course, Tuesday will include a Yizkor service. We'll let you know that the Collaborative is holding second night Chag services at 7 p.m. on Monday night. We hope that you'll join us. And they think that Yizkor on Tuesday will be at about 11 in the morning. Women's League is holding another gift shop sale on Monday, the 23rd of May, from 1 to 4. If you're over 21, and I know some of you here may not be, you can enjoy wine and cheese while you shop, and books from the library will be available. And the office will be closed Monday the 31st for Memorial Day. It'll also be closed on Shavuot, the 17th and 18th. The Misha Beirach list, they want to update that, so if you want to take a name off or put a name on, you should call the office. And they say, see you in Cyber Shul and pretty soon in Shul. And I just want to let you know that tonight, every Saturday night the Collaborative holds a program called Havdalah Together. And tonight we're having an informal conversation led by the lovely, the talented Dr. Scott Spitzer, who is just going to be sort of sharing some of the latest updates that he's connected to on really sort of all the dynamics of what's going on in Israel and how that's, who's being impacted in what ways, sharing some articles, taking questions, and just open to a conversation. So please join us at 8 o'clock, and you can find the link to that Zoom on the Collaborative website, jewishcollaborativeoc.org. Next Saturday night, we're having film night. We have a program called Let's Get Real, and we actually have, we're showing a very exciting movie that you can watch in advance of or after the conversation with the film's creative director and producer, Alicia Jo Rabins and Lara Cuddy. And we can't say the name of the film because it's not out yet, but if you register, you will get a link to the film and you'll be able to watch it. And all I can say is it has to do with financial mystery and mysticism and other cool things. So I hope you'll join us for that. And next, we have some other wonderful classes going on Monday morning, some things that you may find interesting. We'd love to have you join us for whatever you can. Most importantly, we hold a nightly minyan for people who are saying Kaddish. Some members of this community do join us regularly, and we're so happy that you do, and we'd love to have more every night at 6 p.m. And there's a special link for that, and you can also find that on our website. So I want to just say, in this time of Oy v'avoy, as we say, as we make Kiddush, I want to wish us all the tenacity to keep having hope and to find comfort and strength in the community that we make for ourselves here. Many of us have many different Jewish communities, and they're all really important to shaping who we are and also to fostering future generations. So that feels like a good end to the book of Numbers. Jason, do they have a kiddush over here?
Yeah. And to the beginning of it. Yeah.
And do they have a hand washing station? That's what I know.
Hand washing there, and I'll bring the becher.
I have a becker.
And if you want to say hello, there's even bread.
Oh, yes, I need bread, so here we go. We'll let Scott do that.
Okay.
So you're gonna do the
There's
mosaic.
Go ahead.
the,
Get started.
Thank you. We're going. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, lasot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheishet yamim, asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayi nafash uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayi nafash Zachor et yom ha-Shabbat l'kodsho sheshet yamim tavod v'yasita kol melachtecha V'yom hashvi Shabbat l'Adonai Elohecha lo ta'asecho melacha Atal v'nchal v'techa avdecha v'amatecha v'emtecha v'gercha asher v'sharecha ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz et hayam v'et kol asher bam v'yanach b'yom hashvi al kein beirach Adonai et yom ha-Shabbat v'yikadshehu savri
L'chaim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu v'tzivtav v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim.
Amen.
Bereshut, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam amotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen.
Shabbat shalom b'te'avam.
Shabbat shalom. Here, Jason, you gotta have your challah. It's important. And we're gonna close with that.
Oh.
And so we have a special song to close today's service, and I think you'll know it. But if you need the words, it is on page, I'll tell you right now. Page 395 in your Cedarine.
I have a mouthful of bread. It wasn't planned very well. As long as deep in the heart the soul of a Jew yearns, and forward to the east to Zion, an eye looks, our hope will not be lost, the hope of 2,000 years, to be a free nation in our land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. Li'otam chovshi
בארצנו, ארץ ציון בירושלים.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And Chag Sameach.
Shabbat
Tomorrow
Shalom.
night, don't forget to count. Tonight's the last night of the Omer. And we wish you all a festive and Torah-filled Shavuot. I'll just also add that the United Synagogue and the Rabbinical Assembly is holding 24 hours of learning prior to services on Monday morning from 9 a.m. Pacific time, from 9 a.m. Sunday morning to 9 a.m. Monday morning. There's going to be 48 different presenters, each a half hour each, and anybody can log on. Some have to do with music. It's not all, yeah, I mean, it's just wonderful. So please take advantage of joining that.